Welcome back to Book Break. In this video, I'm going to recommend some amazing audiobooks perfect for listening to at this time of year. So I have got 13 recommendations. I picked 13. I thought that was an appropriate number. 13 audiobooks for spooky season. But don't worry, these aren't the kinds of audiobooks that are going to give you nightmares. At least mostly. Some of them are a bit witchy. Some of them are a bit mysterious, some of them have ghosts. Some of them are perfect, cozy Halloween reads for listening to by a warm fire or on a long, crisp autumn walk. And some of them might get you feeling just a little bit shivery. So starting with The Women Could Fly by Megan Giddings and narrated by Angel Peen. This is a dystopia about a world in which unmarried women are controlled by the government. And any woman who acts in any way other than she is expected to runs the risk of having accusations of witchcraft thrown her way. And witch is still a word that is thrown around a lot in this world. If you come down with an illness, maybe a witch did it. If your husband cheats on you, a witch did it. So it's this really terrifying premise of total control over women, but also within the book you've got magic, you've got resistance, you've got a really great mother-daughter relationship. So our main character, Josephine, her mother went missing many years before, but you kind of retrace the bond between them. And you've also got a love story between Jo and a woman that she meets on this magical island. So it has got all the ingredients you need for witchy season. Then you could listen to The Lamplighters by Emma Stonex and narrated by Indira Varma and Tom Burke. You might know of Tom from War and Peace and Indira from Game of Thrones. They're both amazing actors, and so this duo works really well on the audiobook. This is a really atmospheric book about 3 lighthouse keepers who vanish without a trace from a lighthouse in the middle of the sea. And it's also about the women left behind to piece together the mystery of what happened. And it's based on a true unsolved mystery, so it's really compelling stuff. The audiobook of Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes is narrated by Natalie Haynes herself. Natalie Haynes is just brilliant, so it's so exciting that she's narrating her own audiobook here. Her delivery is, of course, perfection. This is the story of a monster you know, but it's not the story you know. So Stone Blind is about Medusa, that terrifying gorgon with snakes for hair and whose gaze can kill humans by turning them instantly to stone. But this story shows a whole other side of her. It goes back to before she had that curse put on her, and also weaves in these other Greek myths whose stories intersect with hers. Next there's Unraveler by Frances Hardinge and narrated by Eleanor Bennett. Everything about this cover screams spooky season to me. This is perfect for your autumnal Halloween listening. As expected from anything written by Frances Hardinge, this is really, really good and slightly creepy YA fantasy. So this book is all about curses, and it's got this dark fairy tale vibe. So a curse, for example, is put on 2 siblings, turning them into 2 distinct types of bird. Unknowingly, one bird eats the other and then has to cope with the guilt of that when they're turned back into a person and realise what they've done. That's the kind of thing that we're dealing with here. Unraveler is about a main character with the ability to unravel these curses. Next I want to recommend Gingerbread by Helen Oyeyemi. This is not Helen Oyeyemi's most explicitly spooky book, that would be White is for Witching, but I absolutely love this audiobook, which is narrated by Helen Oyeyemi herself, which is such a treat, and I absolutely love this book. Gingerbread is another fairy tale-y book with a dark twist. It's set in a country that you won't find on any maps, and it's about a gingerbread recipe passed down through the generations of this family that's seemingly cursed. The book is totally bewitching. It's really sweet and charming, but it's got a very sinister undercurrent, and it left me totally craving gingerbread. Next, some cozy crime. I had to put some cozy crime on this list, so I'm going to recommend The Cat Who Caught a Killer by L.T. Shearer and narrated by Imogen Church. This book is about Lulu, a former police detective now living on a canal boat who is forced out of retirement when her mother-in-law dies under suspicious circumstances, and she is helped in her investigation by a detective unlike any she has ever worked with before, because this one is a cat. The story is set in and around Major Vale, where Lulu and Comrade the cat go exploring to solve this mystery. It's a really charming book for listening to at this time of year. Next, I've got some YA recommendations, starting with Lost in the Neverwoods by Aidan Thomas, narrated by R.V. Roque. This is a Peter Pan retelling. It's set 5 years after the events of the original story, but in this version, not all of the Darling children made it back from Neverland. Now, 5 years later, more and more children have started to go missing in the woods, and Wendy Darling has to try and remember a past that she thought existed only in her imagination. My other YA recommendation is Youve Reached Sam by Dustin Tao and narrated by Sunila Nankini. This one has got a ghost in it, but it's not a scary ghost. This is more of a tear-jerking ghost story. 17-year-old Julie thinks that she's going to be with her boyfriend Sam forever, but then he dies, and their lives together are thrown off track. Desperate to hear his voice one more time, Julie calls up Sam's phone just to listen to his voicemail, but he picks up. So now Julie has got this second chance to say goodbye, but also has to learn how to move on. Now, for a very long-awaited one, The Passenger by Cormac McCarthy, narrated by Julia Whelan and MacLeod Andrews. Cormac McCarthy is a very dark writer, and this is his first comeback novel in 16 years, soon to be followed by Stella Maris, which is the second in this duology. And these books are totally different from anything McCarthy has written before. Instead of bloody, gory, violent tales, these are more philosophical thrillers. So if you listen to The Passenger this spooky season, you will be getting the story of a man who discovers something mysterious in the wreckage of a sunken jet, has to go on the run, and is haunted by memories of his brilliant, troubled sister who took her own life. Now let's get even more Halloweeny with a sci-fi gothic horror story, Leech by Hiron Ennis, narrated by Abigail Thorne. Leech is set in an isolated chateau, already spooky enough, where a parasite is spreading. So a doctor has died and it's discovered that he was hosting a parasite, which should have been impossible because he was already possessed by the Institute, who take root in young minds and shape them into the best doctors. But now an enemy is battling for control over the human body. It's delightfully creepy and weird, and the performance in the audiobook is just incredible. My next audiobook is actually set on Halloween. Daisy Darker by Alice Feeney and narrated by Stephanie Racine is an Agatha Christie inspired thriller with a twist. The book follows an estranged family brought together for the first time in years on Halloween in a house on an island completely cut off overnight from the mainland. And while they're stranded there on this island overnight, someone starts killing them off one by one. Each of the bodies is found with different props arranged in their hands and a creepy poem explaining their life and their death. And getting to hear those poems read out to you in the audiobook really adds to the experience. Now let's go full circle. We started with witches, we've gone to monsters, to ghosts. Let's come back around to witches. Hare House by Sally Hinchcliffe and narrated by Kirsty Strain is a modern twist on a really classic style of ghost story. An unnamed narrator running away from a mysterious past comes to live in a cottage on the grounds of Hare House. Her landlord, who lives in the main house, has this tragic family history, and he lives with his younger sister, a very troubled young girl, clearly disturbed by this tragedy in their past. Our main character's neighbour is a woman thought, according to the town's folklore, to be a witch. A pretty harsh judgment thrown on any older woman living alone. But might it be true after all? Spookier and spookier unexplained things keep happening until you do not know who to trust, even our narrator. And finally, for proper spooky season aficionados, you can listen to this collection of classic Halloween stories edited by Ned Halley and narrated by a big range of audiobook narrators. These are properly spooky tales written by masters of the genre like Edgar Allan Poe, Charles Dickens, Mary Chumley. This is perfect, cozy, spooky listening for a cold, dark Halloween night. If you're just getting started with audiobooks, I actually made a video packed full of my tips for getting into listening to audiobooks. So I will link to that video here so you can click through and have a watch. If you're a big audiobook listener, I will link here to a playlist of all of the other audiobook recommendation videos I've made here on Book Break before. So again, click through and have a browse, and I'll see you next time.